Welcome to the Email Rapport program, and in this I aim to give you lots of insightful information about how you can gain deeper rapport with people via email. Now, the first thing that we're going to look at in the Email Rapport program are predicates. Now, predicates are simply sensory-based words that give us a deeper understanding as to how somebody is thinking. When we have a deeper understanding to the way that a person thinks, then we can think in a similar way to them and communicate in a similar fashion to that person, and therefore gain and create a much, much deeper rapport. So predicates, what are predicates? Predicates are words that describe, like I say, the way somebody chooses to think. Now, the way that you can choose to think is you can choose to think with images in your mind's eye. You can picture things in your mind. You can choose to think with your internal dialogue. You can talk to yourself, or you can imagine or remember things that other people have said. Composers, for example, imagine what a piece of music sounds like and then they play it. Whereas interior designers imagine what an empty room will look like when it's full of soft furnishings, paint, clothes, furniture, people, etc. Also, we can think with our feelings. It just doesn't feel right. Oh, that feels like a great idea. And people will tend to favour one of these ways of thinking or communicating with other people. It's context dependent. So maybe at work and come home and you're very, very tired after a really long day and you just want to get out of the clothes and get into some soft, relaxing clothes, and maybe the tendency tends to swing to a more kinesthetic approach rather than a highly visual approach. But the important thing for us to do is to look and notice the predicates that people use in their emails. Now, people who have understanding of NLP or hypnosis and understand about predicates seldom think to use them in the written word, where of course they become more effective because the voice tone, tonality and body language, which make up a huge part of communication, are no longer there in email. So in one-to-one communication with people, body language and the tone of voice can communicate, and in fact do communicate more than the words themselves, whereas in the written form it is down just to the letters, characters assembled into words, phrases and paragraphs that communicate the meaning. Now, the first set of predicates that I want to talk about are the visual predicates. So this simply is words like look, see, vision, watch, appear, clear. Words that pertain to the visual portion of your experience. So people will say things like, look at it like this. I want to show you such and such when we meet. I'm explaining it like this so that you can see it from every point of view. Now, point of view is a visual thing, view, and so is see. See it from this point of view. Look at this. Did you see that? When we meet, I want to show you such and such. Show you such and such. When people use visual-based words, and there is a PDF that you should be able to download below this video, which contains a whole host of visual, auditory and kinesthetic words, the predicates, plus phrases, so you can have a look through those and get an idea of the way people use phrases and the way people use these words. When you see in the emails that people have used visual predicates more so than other predicates, then you can start to copy those kind of words in your communication back to them. So if people use phrases like, I want to show you something when we meet, rather than say, I want to tell you about something when we meet next, because that conveys the same kind of message in that there is a subject matter that the person wants to communicate to you about. However, they've chosen to say, let me tell you or let me show you. because they prefer to use words like show, see, look, the visual predicates, because they tend to think with pictures. Now, when we know this, and when we start using these phrases back to people, it makes us seem a lot more like the person we're communicating with. And of course, the more that we are like the person we communicate with, then the more that they like us. Now, the auditory predicates are words like hear, listen, sound, say, announce, talk, silent, loud, tone, tempo, noisy. These kind of words are the kind of words that people who will write in their emails things like, let me know if it sounds like a good idea to you. Let me know if it sounds like a good idea to you. Now, they could quite have easily have said, if you think it's a good idea, let me know. But they chose to use the word sound because they favour the audio predicates. Take my word for it. I hear that so-and-so is doing something next week. I hear that... ... Take my word for it. Well, these words are auditory based. Silent, loud, noise, audio, tone. These kind of words are used by people that prefer audio and prefer to think with their internal dialogue, or to think by remembering sounds. And these kind of words, when used back in an email to the person that emailed you, these kind of words will again minimize those differences. The kinesthetic predicates, feel, touch, hold, solid, relax, soft, sharp, heavy, hit, grab, these kind of words, it feels right to me. So let's stay in touch. He just ripped it to shreds. He just poked holes in it. It's a solid proposal. Solid. Touch and go. Now, stay in touch could be stay in contact, but stay in touch or touch and go or move over a solid or heavy, solid proposal. Again, this is the person telling you, quite openly telling you, they prefer the words like feel. They're very aware of their kinesthetic part of their experience. They're very aware of their kinesthetic portion of their experience, what's going on around them. They will wear soft and comfortable clothing when you see these kind of people. In their emails, they will use the kinesthetic predicates when they have the opportunity to. Now, if you're making an email and you're going to send it to somebody that you've never sent it to before, and you don't know the person, it's a good idea to use words that are non-sensory specific and to use a number from all three categories, just to make sure that you touch base with every aspect. So as much as you can, use words that aren't sensory based until you get an email back from them and start to get a clue as to what predicates they prefer, so that you can start using them in your communications. And of course, you can use one or two of the sensory predicates from each three category, visual, auditory and kinesthetic, to email them, so that, of course, no matter which part of the sensory system that they prefer at that moment in time, whether they prefer to process information visually, kinesthetically or auditory, you've said something in your email which connects and strikes a chord with them. Strike a chord. They're used in language all the time, and they reveal so much about the way people think. So take a look at predicates. If you want to stop this, have a look back through your email inbox and have a look at the emails that you've got from people and see the predicates that they've used. And notice whether you match or mismatch in your emails back to them. Do you use the same kind of predicates back, or do you not? Now, the next thing I want to talk about is the layout of the email. So something a lot more simple, a lot more visual for you to see straight away, and makes a big impact. Now, the layout of the email, there are a number of things that we can, again, match. And the whole idea of creating rapport, the idea of gaining rapport and maintaining it with people, is based largely on the fact that we minimize differences between ourselves and other people. So when we appear to be the same, when you go away on a holiday to another country and you meet somebody from the same country as you when you're out and about, it's instant connection that you feel. Or if you've gone on a holiday and everybody's from the same country, but you find that there are some people from the same town as you, you've instantly got a connection, because there is a similarity. Now, in emails, the similarity is quite simple, it's quite obvious. The similarities are things like the way they lay out their email. Now, people will choose a certain font size. Maybe somebody chooses a slightly larger font size than normal because they find it easier to read. So guess what? If you send them an email back at 10 point and they're used to reading 14 or 16 point in their emails that they write, well, they're not going to be able to read your email very well. So if they've sent a request to you for some information, or if they've emailed you about your service or your product, and you email them back with a tiny little text font, they're not going to be able to find it very easy to read, and instantly you've created an unpleasant sensation, a discomfort in that person with regard to your communication. That's the wrong kind of association that you want to create. So the font size is important, that if somebody emails you for the first time, then when you reply, use the same font size that they use. And use the same font. If it's a different font, then use the same font back. Look at the colour. Maybe they use a dark blue instead of black. Maybe they use a different type of font, colour and font size to the one that you normally use. Now, if you've emailed somebody first yourself and they email back and quite clearly use different colour, font size and different font itself, if you suddenly in your second email to them switch to using everything that they use, it might come across as being a little odd. However, if you just use one of them to start with, just change the font or the size of it or the colour, then it will be a softer way in, and you can change the next one after 2 more emails. Also, I want you to look at the length of sentence. Do they use really long sentences that just kind of seem to go on and on and on? Or do they use short sentences? Look out also at paragraph spacing. Do they put a new line between every paragraph? Do they make their paragraphs short, almost like a sentence? What kind of punctuation do they use? Do they use question marks a lot? Do they use exclamation marks? Do they use 3 exclamation marks in a row? Do they use ... the ellipses? Do they use the @ symbol? Do they put smiley faces? Look at the different kinds of punctuation that they use. Are they very formal with their emails? So this is a very simple thing to start matching straight away. The way that somebody emails you and the way they lay out their email. If you match the way you lay out your email, so they say hi, then they have a space, and the next line is the first bit of information, then they have a space and another line, then they have a space and another line, then you put the spaces in. If they say hi, comma, and then start a little sentence, well, maybe you can do it that way. Look at the layout, the text font, the size, the colour, the paragraph spacing, the length of sentence, and the kinds of punctuation they use. Also, I want you to look out for the misuse of capital letters and lowercase letters and punctuation. Look out for slang as well. Some people will use in lowercase I. Thanks, I will email you. And some people will use capital letters in the wrong place. Now, of course, there are certain instances like this that a lowercase I is grammatically wrong. It is incorrect. It's not the correct way of using extra capital letters and different abbreviations. So the word email, for example, can be written with a lowercase e and then the word mail and no space between it, email. You can have the lowercase e with a hyphen and then the word mail, so email. You can have a capital E, you can have a hyphen between the capital E and the mail. There's lots of accepted standards that are just different, and neither one of them are right or wrong, or they become accepted and usable in written words, especially in email, which is a less formal type of written word. And so those things are good to match. The lowercase I, for example, and obviously misspellings, if people misspell things, we're not going to match that. I would always suggest using capital I, even if people use lowercase i's. But look out, if they use extra capital letters, because it's important, well, a lot of sales copy and a lot of language on the internet and emails will quite often misuse capital letters, and it's okay to copy those. If we are in a situation where it is wrong, then I would suggest using less than 50% of the mistakes that they use. Like I say, I'm not suggesting you misspell words, but maybe you use the same style of missing out capital letters or using extra capital letters just occasionally here and there, so that again that person, oh, they're like me, they do it that same way. They have that same feeling about it being a similar kind of communication, and this person is obviously very similar to me. Now, the tone of the email as well. Is it a direct request for information? Or is the person essentially waffling? Are they supplying extra information that you don't really need, but which is nice, and it gives you more information about them? And how direct are they with their request? Because if they're very short and direct and to the point, then that's the reply they want. A short, direct and to the point reply. And if you spin it out really long with lots of complicated, then you're going to lose them, and they're going to get bored or not disinterested. If they supply a little bit of information that's extra, then you can start going into detail about things. I'm not saying that if it's very direct you can't go into detail. You can. But let's look at how direct a person's email communication is. And let's be direct back with them. If normally you are in the habit of writing much longer and supplying much more information, then you can start to supply more, but still keep it short and direct. Look at the paragraph, look at the way they use sentences, probably shorter sentences, and matching those things as well. Now, when somebody emails you for the first time and they're inquiring about your product or your service, and maybe it's a very direct email, and maybe it's laid out nicely, and you've matched all that kind of stuff, they haven't given you any sensory information with the predicates maybe, they've sent you a short email, or maybe they've sent you a very long email that gives you lots of information about how you can talk to that person, or how you can show that person that you are like them. Well, if they're asking for a quote, or they're asking for some direct information, or basically if they are asking for a price or a quote for your product or your service, my advice is to not directly answer their question straight away. My advice would be to supply them with information. Can you give me some more information about your product or service and a price? We'll start to give them some more information about your product or your service, and ask them for a little bit more information before you give them a quote, if it's appropriate. Because if you can send another email, if you can reply to the person's email and have them reply back to you again, they're making a bigger commitment. And the deeper the commitment that they make, the more time that they invest, the more likely that they are to purchase your product or service, or to whatever it is that is the reason they emailed you in the first place. Now, people will start to add social niceties into emails, especially when it's the second, third, fourth email. As you move on and you've started a dialogue with the emails, you have more than one email going now, it's okay and it's perfectly acceptable, and I think impolite to not ask how a person is, or I hope you're well, or wish them a happy weekend or a nice evening. So the social niceties, again, have a look at the way they do it, and if by your second email to that person or third email to that person they haven't started to add any social niceties, then maybe it's time for you to put some in. So if it's been a while, a week or two, since you emailed the person, you've had a couple of emails with this person and shaping up a deal or a joint venture, or you're arranging to meet or something, I hope you're well, ? And of course then laid out in the same kind of paragraph with etc., etc. that we've talked about and covered already. And to wish people a happy weekend or a nice evening, again, this starts to deepen the relationship between you and the other person. Now, as the emails continue and go further, and as your relationship starts to grow, you'll start to find more information about them. And specifically, there are 5 areas of people's lives that they are very interested in. Not surprisingly, it's their life. And the categories that people generally tend to favour are home, family, friends, work, and the future. These 5 categories, the more information that you can get from these 5 categories, then the more information that you can communicate back to these people about how much you care about them. Because their home is very important to them, so is their family, so are their friends, so is their work and their future. So if you communicate, and if you just make a short little comment about, I hope that the short trip you took, the little holiday, the vacation was wonderful, or have a great evening, and then they tell you something about what they did that weekend when they reply to your email on Monday. And if they say something about a social gathering, or their friends that they went out with, or a family event, you can start to remember these things and start to comment on them. And also the future, about things that they want to achieve in the future. So, depending on the type of email, whether it's a personal email or whether it is a business context, you would want to keep this shorter in the business context, and in social situations you can start to expand and make these bigger. And of course, in business situations, you do want to keep it to the point of the communication, but you do want to show that you care about this other person, and show that they're not just somebody to whom you view as a way of making money, or view as a way of gaining things that you want, but that you actually care about them, that they are important. So we'll have a look at the social niceties, and if you look back through your inbox, you'll see that people quite often ask, how are you? Hope you had a nice weekend, or have a nice weekend. Now, the next thing that we're going to look at here in this presentation is the way that we can embed commands within our emails. So, this is moving into the area of persuasion, influence a little bit, but I want to give you a heads up on this because embedded commands can be used in the written word. Simply, an embedded command is not a question or a statement, but a command, a call to action, that is softened by being placed within a sentence. And these can be used in the written word to lead, Gaining rapport is about leading. Ultimately, we gain rapport so we can lead people towards making a purchase to our product and service, or towards any kind of destination that we want. Now, the use of embedded commands within emails is used with an analog marking, and you'll see this in sales pages all the time, where people use bold letters or all capitals. They'll use larger text fonts, different text fonts. They'll change the colour of the text font. Maybe they'll highlight it. There's a whole range of ways that people will mark out certain things that are important in the communication. Now, although I advise, generally speaking, to not mark out too much in emails, it is acceptable depending on the communication, depending on who it's going to. Or maybe it's an email that's going out to a list of people. It's going out to hundreds of thousands of people. And so certain aspects of that you would want to mark out. So you might want to use capital letters or bold text or italics or a larger font or a different colour, so that certain parts of the communication stand out more. So again, have a look back through your inbox at some of the emails that come through and look at the way that these are used. Generally speaking, one-to-one communications with people don't tend to use lots of bold, italics, capital letters, parenthesis, brackets, highlighted stuff, but people will sometimes use them. They will italicize things and put them in brackets, or they will make something bold or use all capitals. Now, this is marking out certain parts of the words. Now, you can do this very, very subtly by using a text font like Arial and then a text font like Arial Narrow, but increasing the text font by 1 point. And the Arial Narrow then looks very similar to Arial. If you use two text fonts that look very similar and you write a short little phrase with one text font that is different but looks similar within the rest of it, within the rest of the text and the email copy, people won't necessarily notice there's anything different, not on a conscious level. And the idea with embedded commands, a tool from neurolinguistic programming, NLP, and hypnosis, embedded commands are a way of delivering suggestions, ideas to people without them noticing, without them being consciously aware that you've delivered that suggestion. Because when suggestions are delivered unconsciously, they are more likely to be accepted and acted on, because the conscious mind doesn't reject them, question them, and reject them. So you can be sneaky, and you can use embedded commands within emails by altering ever so slightly, or by adding an extra space at the beginning and the end of the phrase. And again, the extra space, if you add an extra space and then shrink both of those spaces down to 10 point, then it's only it's only half a space extra maybe. And that half a space extra goes unnoticed by the conscious mind. And the marked out portion of the email becomes a lot more important to the person's unconscious mind, notices it. So if there are some ideas or some concepts within the email that you want to mark out as being important, then this is a way of doing that subtly. If it's a large mass emailing to people, then again, this kind of way of marking things can make it so that people scanning through the emails pick up and take in the bits that you want them to, either using all capitals, bold, or by using different text fonts, larger and spacing. With mass emailings to thousands of people, it's important that the important elements of your communication come across. And so, of course, using some of the more obvious, like bold and italic marking, is okay and is acceptable to get your point across more. Now, the last thing I want to cover in this section of email report is reciprocity. And reciprocity is defined by Dr. Robert Cialdini as being the #1 persuasion and influence technique. Now, of course, this is about rapport, and again, I'm talking here persuasion and influence. Reciprocity is accepted by sociologists and anthropologists the world over, that if you give to a person, they will want to repay you. And normally they will want to repay you to a larger extent than that which you were given. This is used by salespeople all the time. They offer discounts. Hey, you get a discount. It's uninvited. The discount was uninvited, yet it is still a gift that is given to you. Again, there's a PDF that you should be able to download below this video presentation that is a example of reciprocity in action, in a way that you can use it so that you can create other examples of reciprocity. So if you give things to people, then they're likely to give things back to you, which is why all sign-up forms on websites have a free report, the 7 top secrets of, or a free video. Sign up for my email and I'll give you something. It's a fair exchange. I'm going to give you this for free if you give me your email. And then they've given you something. And then they might tell you that there's this program that's $97, but not today. Today you can get it for not $47, but just $27. Well, whether it ever goes up to $97 and it was a special promo or not, the fact that it's been reduced by such a huge amount is a gift being given to you. And so you feel much more likely to reciprocate the favour. If you get sent a Christmas card or a birthday card and you forget to send the other person a Christmas card, then it makes you feel bad. If somebody buys you dinner, you're more likely to want to buy them dinner back, to return the favour, to reciprocate. So every time we have the opportunity within an email to give somebody something, and whether that's just information, then we can mark it out, make it, I'm happy to give this to you, blah blah blah. And it's just an idea, it's a concept. But when you tell the person that you're giving it to them, and again, in mass emails, it can be, here's a gift for you. Or in the one-to-one emails, I'm happy to give you this idea. Rather than meeting next time, I'm happy to give you this idea now, so that when we meet next time, we can move forward. And when you tell people, I'm going to give you this, they're, oh, thank you. And they will return an email and probably say thank you. And you have just given them something. You've just told them you've given them something. And they, like I say, are likely to give something back to you. Well, this is the end of part 1 of the audio program. I hope you've got a lot from it. Part 2 goes into some deeper depths about the way people think and the stuff to look out for in the written parts of their communication, so that you get a deeper insight into how they think and can tailor your communication back. For right now, I would suggest going back, reviewing this, having a look through your inbox and looking at some of the simple things from layout and from predicates that you can start to change in your communication and your reciprocal communications with other people.